Hello, and welcome to the Pod People, the show where we live deliciously all day, every day.
Which?
I'm the original sinner, Matisse Van Rossum.
Which? I'm Ben Sheets.
I'm Corruption. Cleveland.
Corruption, thou art my father?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
you know it. You got
yeah.
that deep cut.
As I gave on my update on our episode last week, we're not talking about us. That'll be next week. We're talking about The Witch.
We're talking about you.
Yeah.
You witch.
Today we're actually here to listen to you. We're just gonna sit here and
In silence.
and you can pour your heart out, and we're just gonna listen. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what's bothering you?
Listeners, you're our friends. We care about you.
And we're here to listen to you.
You gotta speak up, though. I can't really hear very well.
That's enough of that bullshit. This week we're talking about The Witch, or the VVitch, depending on how you prefer it stylized. The 2015 period horror film by Robert Eggers. His directorial debut won him the Best Director Award at Sundance in 2015.
Deservedly.
And a film that I have now seen 6 times, I believe, with this last watch. Easily, hands down, one of my favorite films of the past decade. Horror or otherwise. Full stop.
Yeah, I think we've all seen this movie several times at this point.
Yeah, it's probably my 4th time seeing it.
And I was happy to discern on this watch that there were still things that I picked up on for the first time. And I think that is a real winner when you get a film that even after watching it 6 times, you're still noticing and appreciating new things. And this is one of those cases where it's pretty fucking remarkable that this was dude's feature-length film debut. Like, I'm sure he did some shorts beforehand, but, like, this was his introduction to the world of filmmaking, and, like, what a fucking powerhouse.
Yeah, it absolutely catches lightning in a bottle in a way that few debuts do. But usually those big debuts are the ones that are remembered. You know, you usually get some legendary directors out of them. And I'm excited to see what Roger Eggers does next.
Oh, I certainly am.
Yeah, I would say that Robert Eggers is in that same camp as David Robert Mitchell, who did It Follows the same year as The Witch, actually.
Man,
Which was his first feature film.
2015 was such a good year for horror. Oh.
Yeah, it was. That was a good year for movies in general. I was going back and looking at a lot of the movies that came out that year. I guess you could put The Witch also in 2016 because that's when it got its limited theatrical release. That's when you and I first saw it, Ben, in Milwaukee in the theater. Yeah, this movie's fucking awesome. It's set in 17th century New England, in the original colonies. A family of Puritans is exiled from the colony that they live in because the father is too religious, which is really saying something for Puritans.
Yeah.
That he is too zealous to remain in the town. So he and his family are sent out into the wilderness where they start a new life on a little farm at the edge of a mysterious wood in which a witch witches them. The Witch.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description. One of the things I really love about this movie is how strictly they follow period guidelines, and they really stick to the period it's in. It's really authentic.
Oh, I'll say. It's one of the most accurate period piece films I've ever seen. And
Yeah, same.
My dad's a historian. Like, I go crazy for that sort of thing.
I would say that you could put this film certainly in the same caliber as like Barry Lyndon, which is maybe the only other film that I've seen that is so strongly dedicated to capturing the period in which it's set. I personally think Barry Lyndon as a film is kind of overrated, but like, man, it is a really good example of a period piece in the same way that The Witch is.
Yeah, this movie is almost as period accurate as last Les Mis film was. Really impressive. Really good stuff.
Haven't seen that, nor will be seeing that.
Yeah, and they got the language right and everything. It's really incredible.
Well, yeah, I mean that is
no hate on Les Mis.
That is one of the really great things about the production of this film is that
legitimately
in his writing of the script, Robert Eggers studied the journals of settlers who lived during the 1600s when this film is set, so he got the language down. A lot of the dialogue is pulled directly from some of those journals.
Which I believe it mentions during the credits as well for the film.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I can't blame them for putting that up front and center, like at the end of their movie. Like that really is such a point of pride.
It's a real dedication to the craft, and I mean Robert Eggers in interviews that I've watched with him, like he's a New England boy, and he has always been fascinated with the darker, macabre history of New England. Obviously the Salem witch trials and things like that, and just like that part of the country has such a history that like the rest of the country doesn't have. Like it's just sort of like part of the landscape there. Like I really got a sense of that the one and only time I visited New England. I would love to go back. But, that's why, like, for his next film, we're getting another period piece set in, like, Maine, with the lighthouse, and he's supposedly doing a Nosferatu remake. So he's got a passion for, like, that old dark New England spooky shit.
Yeah.
Witches and vampires and shit.
And bears.
Well, the thing is, there's a lot to unpack with that kind of stuff. You got the long history of colonialism. You have the witch trials, obviously, which,
right.
Even play an element in this movie.
Yeah, totally.
The thing I really love, though, about all of the adherence to period in this movie is it never feels like a crutch.
No,
per se,
accurate.
And, they don't just lean on it to lean on it. It's part of the world building without feeling like it points at itself.
It's a good example of immersion. You watch the film and you feel like you're getting a look into that time period, and you allow yourself to get swept away by it, rather than being like, oh, this is a film that is trying to be period accurate. Like, you're exactly right, Ben. Like, it doesn't like make a big deal out of like, look how period accurate I am. Look at my period dialogue and my period costumes and my period sets. It just feels like you're there. It feels like you're in the 17th century in puritanical New England.
Oh yeah, and such a smart move for the majority of the narrative to be set like in the middle of nowhere, just on this this small family's plot.
Yeah, the entire film except the very beginning where we see the father on trial in front of this like Puritan council, which I mean that's such a strong start for the film too, because like every shot looks like a Rembrandt painting.
Oh yeah,
because they've got those like
the slatted windows,
lighting, and the
golden light,
and like the old Dutch outfits with like the broad brimmed hats and stuff that are so common of the pilgrims. And it's all just like still shots, and where like almost nobody is moving, so it looks it's extremely painterly. And yeah, that's the only time in the film that we're anywhere other than their little farm and the surrounding woods. So the sense of isolation is really good.
Oh yeah, and when they leave the settlement too, like the comparative to paintings definitely don't end there. Like,
oh no,
the whole film like looks like just compositions of plein air pieces, from the era. It's spectacular.
Yeah, well, my point is that the opening does such a great job of like setting that stage, like giving you an impression. And I love how in like a lot of those early shots, like you don't see anybody's faces. It's all like from behind them. and then you get the shots of like the crowd looking on and like the council sitting in front, and then it finally, and the whole time like Ralph Ineson is talking and it finally cuts to him. It's so fucking good.
You get all of the judgment without.
Yeah, exactly.
Because most of the scene is centered around the daughter, right? Like, and her facial expressions.
A little bit, yeah. You definitely you see her some too, but I mean, the father is the one who is on trial. He's the zealot, and you know he's giving his speech like.
It almost acts like as a narration at the beginning.
It does. Really cool. What did we forsake our homes and travel to this new barren wilderness to find but the kingdom of God, you know, like, which I think is a really excellent precedent for like who his character is and what the family is like. It's the whole film is just like these people are their entire lives revolve around the worship of God, and like to the extent that their lives just seem miserable because they can't allow themselves any sort of pleasures because like it's all about that idea of being born into original sin and having to spend your entire life atoning for things that you haven't done or things that you have done. It's very bleak.
Well, the thing about it is it compounds with that, you know, initial scene does a really great job of setting a tone of dread.
Yeah.
You know, it's that isolation of being cast out and forced to live on your own, essentially.
During that scene, too, like when they leave the settlement, you see the family, like, on the carriage. I love that because we see there's one shot of the thoroughfare of this settlement, and it's a full set. Like there's buildings and stuff. I'm sure that they must have shot it like at some sort of location that was already acting as that.
New England is full of those like historically accurate pilgrim villages and shit like that.
I always loved those as a kid too. Like but it's very well done. You've got like a lot of like trappers and traders in the background and
Native Americans. That, like you said, it's that one shot from the perspective of the children and the mother sitting in the back of the cart as they're leaving the settlement and the gates are closed behind them as they're being sealed out.
Yeah, and they're humming some sort of like song to try and like keep themselves, like some sort of hymn to keep themselves like comforted as the strings build up.
Well, yeah, another thing we might as well get out there right away is the score is fucking incredible. It's one of the best film scores I've heard in years. Yeah. It's just like so perfect for setting the tone. It's
traditional as well.
Yeah, it's all strings. It's all like it's all super dissonant too. Yeah, it's all voices and strings, and it's so moody and dark and heavy that it's just like from the very beginning, like as they're like you said, as they're leaving the settlement, like the strings are building, and it's like this is uncomfortable music. Like this is not like a good opportunity for them. Like this is the start. You know, it's the start of something bad immediately.
It complements the tone of the images.
Yeah, totally.
Really well.
It's dark. It's gothic almost.
Well, and it's beautiful too because it's the strings and the satanic almost choir sort of build up and up as the family sort of heads down the trail and into the wilderness. And so you feel that like even from like an auditory perspective that you're just getting swallowed up by the trees and by like this like dark forest.
Well, and exactly, and like when they come to the site where they're gonna build their house, you know, we get the shots of like Ralph Ineson like kissing the ground, and like they're all kneeling in the field and they like join hands and raise up their hands, but then it like pushes in on the woods at the edge of the field, and it's just like, this is not a good place for you guys to like build your home. Like go elsewhere. You know, like this is dark as shit. Like this is some spooky nonsense.
Right. And it's like no wonder too, like the woods especially then were just such bad news, man. I'm very hippie, like I'm very pro nature. I love nature and whatnot, going on hikes and camping and stuff, but like I'll be the first to say like the forest is fucked, man. Like,
true.
Like, there are pros and cons to nature and industry. And this film does a great job of showing both. Like, there's, like, you get the horrors of progress as well. Like, even within, like, how the family farm, like, has affected, like, the environment around them and whatnot. Like, there's all these little sort of aspects that provide commentary on the two worlds.
This film gives a really good impression of, like, the woods being very primordial and
Yes.
untamable. I think that's a big theme of this film is like they're trying to build a new life for themselves and be happy and prosperous and like sow their crops so they can like make a living and trade to people and, you know, be happy. But it's like they can't tame the land around them. And I mean, that's not solely the fault of nature. A big part of it is because there's a witch in the woods that is actively hexing them. But I think that theme of like not being in control of your life and what's happening around you and the horror that comes from that is a huge theme of the film.
Oh yeah, such a great understanding, like from a writer's perspective, of like that lack of agency and how terrifying that can be.
Yeah, totally.
I think it also does an interesting commentary on colonialism in a way, because you know they kind of try to colonize this remote area,
Tame the
you know,
wilderness.
tame the wilderness,
Yeah.
and
Right.
sometimes it can't be tamed.
Yeah.
You know,
Or just shouldn't be.
yeah, or shouldn't be.
Well, right, like that is the thing. Like they pick a really bad place to settle because there is a 100% real authentic witch living in the woods, like very close to.
That's a guaranteed 100% authentic wits, ladies and gentlemen.
One of the things I love so much about this movie is that we as the audience are never in any doubt that the witch is real. But a good chunk of the film is about them trying to figure out if the witch is real. Like how much of what is happening to them is just bad luck and like what is actually, you know, a curse. And it takes them a long time to, you know, even start to accept the idea of a witch, even as Puritans. But like we are never in any doubt of that.
It's so well balanced too, because like what is the daughter's name? Thomason, thank you. Yeah, whenever like Thomason is, you know, like sort of trying to adapt as she may to the circumstances around her, she's always making for the most part like the right decisions.
Yeah, 100%.
And so like you still feel for her, like and you relate with her character very strongly as you're supposed to during all of those events. Whereas the rest of the family, when they're making these really poor choices and decisions, like it puts you on edge because you know that the wrong choices and that, you know, and that they're going to negatively affect her, you know,
Right.
Thomasine primarily. And man, does that just fucking put you on edge.
What I love too is that right after that scene of them like claiming their land, you know, it jumps forward in time to when they have their house built and their little farm established, and the first scene we get there is Thomason praying. And, you know, she's admitting to all of her sins, you know, like playing on the Sabbath and being disrespectful to her parents and all of this shit. But at the end, asking for mercy and like for her family to like have good fortune and for things to like be good for them, you know? And it's kind of sad because like the movie starts with like that very earnest, sympathetic yearning for like happiness, and everything that happens from that point out is just more and more miserable for them. It's like her prayers are being answered in the opposite way. Like she's asking for prosperity and forgiveness and happiness, and all they get from that point on is misery.
Yeah, and it's neat because like for the entirety of the family at the beginning, you can relate to a certain degree with them. They still feel like very real people.
I think you can for
like,
the entirety of the film, honestly.
And when you don't really understand like why the family left, you know, early on, like I'm fairly certain like they do make that like relatively clear in the dialogue, but considering the manner of dialogue, like
they don't offer specifics, you know, like
until later on.
Even so, barely. The council says that Ralph Ineson's character is too zealous.
I mean, you get it in broad strokes, you know,
Right.
like
I think that's fine.
you see
information you
the
need.
judgment of the town before they leave. So like
Yeah,
that says all that needs to be said, really.
It does, but like you don't know whether like it's the town at fault or the father is what I'm saying. Like it could be clear that it could just be like the father was being like honestly religious or whatever, and you know he cared a little too much.
Well,
or
I mean,
you don't know fully why.
I mean, I don't know if either one can really take the blame in a situation like that.
That's my point.
You
Like,
know, like
which is why like relatability
Yeah,
remains
yeah.
intact.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't even point it at anyone in like such a realistic scenario, which I think works well.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's interesting. One thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is they do directly show the witch early on, like we were saying.
Oh, yeah.
And we know that.
Oh, yeah.
And at first, when I first watched this movie, I remember it bothering me a little bit that they show, just because the sense of dramatic irony sucked a little bit of the tension out. But upon rewatches, I found that it recontextualized a lot of those scenes in a really interesting way. And I just wanted to talk about a little bit. I wanted to hear your guys' opinions on how that recontextualized some of those later scenes.
Yeah, totally.
Knowing that there's actually a witch, versus, if, for example, they didn't show the witch.
I think it's the earlier scenes where it would have been there would have been a much larger negative impact on the narrative if the witch had been an ambiguity at that time, largely because, like, Thomasin, for instance, like, that sequence is led up to by her losing her brother. Right, like she's playing peekaboo with him, and for just a split second, she closes her eyes, opens them again, and the baby's
gone. Also, like, what an incredible scene! Like, what a way to do that too.
Oh God, it's sequenced out so well.
To just have her covering her eyes for a second and peekaboo, and it looks down, the baby's gone, and she looks up, and there's nothing, but there's that one bush on the edge of the woods that's moving.
Yeah, it wasn't until this last time that I watched it too that I even noticed that when she's playing peekaboo with the baby, like. And it's flitting back and forth between, like, it's just doing 180s between, like, her face and the baby's face. Like, the baby starts out very happy, but, like, in the last second, like, where you see the baby's face when she closes her eyes, the baby just has this moment of, like, uncertainty on its face. And it's, oh man, it gets me. Like,
I feel like that was probably just good luck on the
Happy
filmmakers'
accident.
part.
Oh yeah, like,
because like
absolutely.
that's an infant. You can't direct an infant and its facial expressions.
No, they caught it, and in the editing they were able to, like, work it in there, and it's so perfect. It feels so right.
To answer your question, Ben,
Yes.
The reason I think that showing the witch so early works so well for me is because every single character in the family, like, the arc of the film is that they all go through a legitimate crisis of faith. And I think that knowing that they're being acted on by a malevolent, satanic force very much recontextualizes that crisis of faith. And I think it makes it more tragic for them too, because you very much see them questioning, like, why is God doing this to us? Like, what are we being punished for? And they don't understand it, but we understand it. And it's like, no, you're not being punished by God. You are being cursed by a witch. Like, it is the devil that is acting on you, not God. And I think that makes the family simultaneously sympathetic and also tragic characters. Like, yeah, Thomasin is our lens for the most part, but I think that every single member of the family is understandable and relatable. Like,
yes.
The mother and father both have some, like, really horrible moments where they, like, really badly mistreat Thomasin, especially the mother, but, like, you understand where they're coming from. You don't have to agree with it, but you get where it's coming from. And I think that us as the audience having the certainty of what's happening gives you a better opportunity to, like, understand their misery better.
I have another point to add to that as well. It really does help with a point of relation with Thomasin, and you would think the opposite would be true. Like, oh, well, if we had that ambiguity, then we would share that ambiguity with Thomasin. But the problem is that one of the greater points of ambiguity with the other characters in the family is whether Thomasin is a witch or not.
Right.
And that tension is lost if you are also unaware, because you're at that point supposed to be very much so and are feeling concerned for Thomasin.
Right.
And because the whole purpose of the film is, like, her arc into spoiler things. I feel like the film would have to be completely reworked if you were to create ambiguity with whether there's a witch or not.
I actually slightly disagree. Obviously, I think the way it is works really well, and I'm not trying to lessen that at all, but I think in a traditional film, they would not show that to build the tension, because sympathetic characters, even if you don't definitively know, you'll back. But I think in a way, what it does successfully by showing it early is it makes the film a little less nihilistic in a weird way. Like, don't get me wrong, the film's bleak as hell
it's really
throughout. But
what you're
because
going,
they're a victim of fate rather than archetypal, religious zealotry
Right.
and old traditions,
It's not
it's out of their hands a little bit.
It's not the seventh seal. The characters are questioning the silence of God, but we as the audience are not, because we know that the devil is working against these characters. I think that having that certainty early on actually works against the trope of that question of the silence of God, which a lot of films like The Seventh Seal do really well. I think having that certainty for the audience offers a fresh perspective that a film with similar themes would not typically give you. I think that's why I appreciate it. Also, I think it just very much provides for a lot of the spookiness of the film.
Yes.
Is the certainty of the witch.
Let's be real, the witch scene with the baby.
Oh my god, it's such a high bar, like, so early on.
It's
like
one of the spookiest scenes in any horror movie.
yeah, it's in
down.
like the first 20 minutes of the film too. Like, the first time I watched the movie, I was like, man, that sets such a high bar. Like, I don't think the film ever meets it again. On subsequent watches, I don't agree with myself. I've sort of gone back on that. I don't have a problem with it setting that high bar really early, but like, yeah, I honestly think that it's more affecting, and that it hammers that point home so well that, like, right after the baby disappears, we cut to seeing this cloaked figure running through the woods with the baby. And then we get that really horrifying scene in the witch's hut where, like, you
just hear the mashing.
Well, you see the baby on, like, an altar, and, like, you see the witch in the background out of focus, and she comes forward and, like, strokes the baby and then, like, puts a knife to its stomach.
Yeah.
And then cuts to, like, from behind of her, like, mashing something and with a stick. And
it's like there's like the percussive, like, tension building of the sequence, and
well,
like,
yeah,
it
well, because
becomes like part of like the
score.
Yeah. And
no, that's really good.
I was nauseated the first time I saw it. I was like deeply sickened, and I almost stopped. Like, I almost couldn't finish the film. Like, it was a lot for me. I mean, as it should be. I mean, that's
I think that is absolutely the effect that they're going for. Like,
it's like you entered the old world.
Not
like,
only
this is what happens. Like,
not only to have child death, but like an infanticide.
Yeah.
Like, right at the very beginning of the film, and to see this, like, wizened old woman, like, smearing, like, baby's blood and gore, like, all over her body. It's fucking spooky, man. Like, it's so dark and gross, and
such a tone setter.
Yeah. And you see so little during that sequence too, and like the framing is just fucking masterful.
I believe it is 3 or 4 extended shots, that whole sequence.
Yes, it's very minimal.
It feels like it lasts an hour or two.
Well, I mean, because they are extended shots, but like, yeah, it's so perfect. It's telling so much with so little. And what I think is so great about that inciting incident of, like, the baby being taken and sacrificed is that, like, because of puritanical beliefs, you are born with original sin, and you are not cleansed of that sin until you are baptized.
Yep.
And that baby is not baptized. So what the family is struggling with so horribly after that is their certainty that because the baby died before it was baptized, that it is in hell. Because that is what happens if you die unbaptized to them. And
which is exactly one of the key reasons that I personally am not a Christian. Like,
yeah, same.
Like, I'm sorry, like, if your God is gonna let a baby die and, like, condemn it to hell, that
for
God's
eternity,
evil and a sociopath. Like, fuck off. Like, not my God. Hashtag not my God.
No, we shouldn't go into that too much to not
open
that
that
if you
can of
want.
worms.
Yeah.
don't want to alienate too many of our listeners, but I agree. But I think as a thematic element for this film, it's extremely powerful, and it's something that that tortures the mother for the entirety of the film. You know, like after the baby is taken, like she doesn't sleep, she just stays up all night crying. You know, and she develops this resentment towards Thomason because Thomason was playing with the baby when the baby was taken. So it's like she blames Thomason, even though it's not at all Thomason's fault. And that is, you know, that's what sets off Thomason being gradually alienated from her family, which leads to her making certain decisions at the end of the film, which we'll get into. It's such a good inciting incident, and it gives you such a good idea of what you're in for the rest of the film, and it's so good.
I think it works well because where a traditional film, you know, wouldn't show the witch stuff right away because the goal would be to build tension with it, with the lack of knowledge and trying to figure out what's going on, you know, the goat, you know, all that stuff. This movie really does the opposite, and that's why I think I started appreciating this movie more on repeat views, is because with trying to find the tension of the movie out of the way, you realize the movie is much more of an atmosphere piece and a character study. You know, I talked at length about atmosphere pieces in like Suspiria, but this is another great example of where the tone and the feeling of the movie really carry it in a lot of ways, just because there's such that bleak sense of dread that permeates every shot.
Absolutely.
Every character decision, every, you know, music cue, and it just works so perfectly.
Well, and what I think is nice too is that like giving the certainty of the witch and there being an element of the supernatural certainly involved doesn't eliminate the mystery from the film. It recontextualizes it and gives you more mystery because you have questions like, are the young twins bewitched? Is the goat the devil? Having the presence of the witch made clear early on just offers new questions.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it cements that sense of dread.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
Like, I would argue that like a lot of those questions would exist if they didn't show the witch. But the thing is, that dread is in there because you know something is up. You know, there's a certainty there that makes it more bleak in a lot of
those
ways.
Those questions might be there, but I think they would have a different context because we know for certain that there is an evil supernatural force at work. Then we can question, like, is Black Phillip just the family goat, or is it Satan in disguise? Because we know for a fact that the devil is at work here. Whereas if there was not the certainty of the witch, there would be much more like, well, how much is it just like bad luck that's happening to this family and that they are taking it as an act of God or an act of the devil, you know, like that it recontextualizes those mysteries, and I think it makes it a lot spookier. On that subject, do we want to talk about Black Phillip?
Yes.
Maybe the best character in the movie, which is high praise because all the characters are great and he's an animal.
Can I answer that with a question?
Yeah.
Do you like the taste of butter?
Yeah, okay. I was going to save that for later on, but that's one of my favorite things about this movie is that for people in the 1600s, living deliciously is being able to eat butter. In 2019, living deliciously is like getting shithoused in an Arby's parking lot and and talking your way out of a DUI using your white privilege like that. Like in 1600s, they're like, oh man, I could fucking sell my soul to the devil and eat butter.
I think Paul
Damn!
would beg to differ. The devil is alive.
Damn, son, I can forsake God and sell my soul to Satan, and I can eat butter?
Yeah.
Shit.
Where's that book? I want to sign.
Right.
I mean, diabetes is the devil's plaything, obviously.
True, man. But yeah, I've read a lot about what an absolute nightmare working with that goat was.
Oh, really? I believe it.
Apparently, it was very foul-tempered and did not do what it was supposed to do at all most of the time, and was just like really aggressive. And they had a really hard time getting the shots, which honestly I think ultimately speaks even higher of this film in general, because the stuff that they got with that goat is so fucking excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's some of the best stuff in the film, and knowing that they had to deal with such a difficult animal in filming, that they were still able to get such like absolute gold, like, good on them.
They should have known what they were getting for, since the goat's stage name is Marlon Brando.
Oh man, yeah, there's so much like spooky stuff with that just big black goat with those massive horns. Like, I'm frankly surprised that a family of Puritans would even have such an animal on their farm.
Playing themselves.
Like, that is like the most satanic looking beast I've ever seen, you know? Like, it is the most metal shit. Give me a tattoo of Black Phillip and I'll fucking join a black metal band. Like, that is such a fucking scary animal. Especially like the relationship that like the twins have to it. Like, these little devil children singing their song about Black Phillip, and that part where like you just have the close up of like the side of Black Phillip's head, and like one of the kids just leans in and it's just like, bah. Bah.
Oh yeah.
Like,
speaking of the kids, I think I said this during the movie, but like during multiple viewings of this film, I've pulled such a 180 on these, or 360 on these like my perspective on these children. At the beginning, I thought they were really cute. Like, I was like, oh, these kids are really adorable. They're just worshiping, you know, like they're just like goofing around, singing these cute songs. They look hideous, they look horrible, but they're not that spooky. And then by the end of the film, I was like, oh, I don't know. And then like on second viewing, I was like, man, these kids are really fucking spooky, and it is creeping me the fuck out. And then on my more recent viewings, I thought they were adorable again for being little Satan babies.
I've never thought of them as anything but spooky little devil kids.
Man, they're the cutest spooky little devil kids.
I mean, the casting is excellent, and also like these kids are probably what, like 6 years old, 6 years old. This just goes to show that like when child actors are good, they're fucking good. Like, I can't imagine how difficult it was to get these like 6-year-old children to like do period accurate dialogue and shit like that, and actually take direction and be believable. Like, and I mean, even the kid who plays the older, or the middle child, the older brother, who's still younger than Thomas, and he's probably like, I mean, the actor might be a little bit older, but he's supposed to be like 12, like 11, 12. He's really excellent.
He's spectacular.
Yeah, all the
His
kids
monologue
are directed excellently.
Is out of this world.
After he's witched and throws up the apple, that scene is great. The exorcism scene is fucking fantastic.
That's personally my favorite scene. Well, the thing is, like, all the kids are excellently directed, especially the little ones.
Yeah.
I've always been impressed with that, because working with kids, man, is so unpredictable.
And like so many movies, there are a lot of good movies that have child actors that are just absolute dog shit.
Yeah. Like,
kids can be such terrible actors, and for a movie like this, having bad child actors in the role of the twins, or even in the older brother, it would have totally broken. It would have broken immersion.
Yeah.
It would have broken immersion, and the fact that they got extremely talented child actors
to do period dialogue,
right? Exactly,
and work as fantastic ambassadors for birth control.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
It's incredible.
Well, I mean, I think we can just sort of extend that blanket of good actors, not birth control, but good actors to the entire cast. I think they all fucking knock it out of the park. Like, Anya Taylor-Joy as Thomason is spectacular.
A star-making role.
Clearly it worked. You know, after this, she got the role in Split. and then she was in Glass, and she's starting to be in more stuff. Like, I think she's only got a promising career ahead of her. The father is played by Ralph Ineson, who I think is an incredible and also extremely underrated actor. He's fucking dope.
Who is he in Game of Thrones?
Dagmar Cleftjaw.
That's right,
And the mother, Kate Dickie, also in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Liza, right? Liza Aaron,
Yeah.
Catelyn's sister. And she's a similarly hateable character in this. Not irredeemably hateable like she is in Game of Thrones.
Irredeemable?
Oh my god.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones is coming back soon, guys.
Oh, yeah. Not to drag in that one.
But
out.
like, yeah, she's really good as well. In this movie, I think, like, while she's still pretty horrible, she's a more sympathetic character. She's redeemable just because of like the shit that the family has been through.
Yeah.
But like, man, they're all so fucking good. Yeah. What a stellar cast, and like they feel like a family, and man,
and the way the personal flaws carry throughout the film as well.
Yeah, totally.
Especially in this last film, I was so impressed by like the father's arc.
Yeah,
I hadn't really
same.
thought about that so much before, that like his character flaw, like all of his mistakes are always for pride.
Yeah.
Like everything that he does, like you slowly recognize that his zealotry is a point of not worship but of pride.
Right.
Like that he has to be the best worshiper. And it's so believable. Like it took like that many viewings for me to like really like buy into that and recognize that theme.
Well,
for
he
his
has
character.
he has that great monologue towards the end, where he like goes out he's like out chopping wood at night in the rain, and he's or maybe it's not raining, I don't remember, but he's just like he's just like impeaching God, like, I know that I've been prideful, I know that everything I've done is for pride, like, punish me but save my children, and like, you want me to eat dirt and I'll eat dirt, and he picks up a handful of dirt and he eats it,
which is
like,
cool because like it reflects like the opening sequence of them kissing the ground.
When he kisses the ground,
and like as a point of worship and respect, and now he's like putting the soil in his mouth as a point of shame.
He honestly might be my favorite character in the film. I agree. I think his arc is really interesting because I think his character makes a lot of bad decisions.
Yeah. Well, like,
but he's pretty well intentioned, I think.
Yeah.
Like he is very prideful, but everything he does, like, he is trying to provide for his family. Like he steals the mother's silver
cup.
The silver cup so he can sell it to buy traps because their crops are failing.
Right, and I love that because like even then that's a point of pride. It's like, hey, look, I'm selling this thing without your consent so I can prove
I can
be
home
the man and bring home the food.
Bring home the food, right?
And it's like
exactly.
and it's that wonderful, like, very believable thing that people do whenever they fuck up, where they shift the blame and they say, I did this for you,
right?
And it's like, oh, he has that kind of that way out.
But like
but
at the same time,
genuine.
like, he has his moments of confession where he admits to that, and you can see that he obviously does care about his family very much, and that his decisions might be misguided, but he does the shit that he does for the love of his family. And I mean, he dies pretty horribly for all of that, and I mean, they all do. Back to what I was saying before about why I like having the certainty of the witch is that, like, they are dealing with a force of nature that they can't comprehend, and that they are mostly well-intentioned people, and it's tragic what's happening to them. Like, it's truly horrible what is happening to their family, and they're being punished for nothing for the most part. And I think that is really hammered home by us knowing for sure, like, there is an outside force at work here. Yeah, I think that he's a great character, and like, Ralph Ineson does such a fucking good job. I wish he was in more shit, honestly. Like, I think his
voice, his beautiful, gravelly, shitty voice is just so spectacular. I love it.
No, he would be a really good voice actor. I feel like he's probably done some voice acting work. He has to have.
Right.
Almost everything in this film is live effects. There are almost no there's little to no like like special effects or anything. It's all like in sequence. It's all in shot. The woods are all real. Like it's all very genuine. The witch's house, when you come across it, they built, just for like 2 shots.
I might be mistaken, but I feel like I read several years ago when this film came out that they did shoot almost entirely using natural lighting, which is impressive. Granted, like to make the comparison again to Barry Lyndon, like it's not as impressive considering that it's the 21st century and
they didn't have to get NASA lenses.
They didn't have to get NASA to make special lenses so they could shoot in candlelight. I mean, obviously some of the nighttime scenes are lit, but I think
So
most of it's mostly shot during natural lighting, using natural lighting. And it's just such a fucking good film all around, like so well made, and like the craft is just chef kiss, spectacular. And there's so many good scenes, like
all of them.
I mean, yeah, like all of them, but like so many like really standout scenes, like the exorcism scene, after the son.
Yes.
Why am I forgetting his name? Jacob? Is that his name? Is that right?
Sounds
think
right.
so. Yeah.
I can remember all the other characters' names. I think Jacob. He's a young lad, and he wants to help out, and he wants to be a man in his family too. So he goes out on his own to try to hunt some food, and he comes across the witch's hut.
Well, he goes out on his own, and then the sister comes up to him at the edge of the woods, which I loved. Because he's brought the horse with him and everything, and he's like,
oh yeah, he's getting ready to take the horse.
It's such
out.
like a genuine like point of relation to like if you've had siblings, like it feels so. I was saying it during the film too. Like moments like this are so interesting to me because it could almost feel cliche if like I couldn't just personally relate to it so much, and like it just felt so genuine to me. And that was like. The sister's like, so where are you going? And he's like, I'm not telling. I gotta go. You can't come along. And she says, well, I'll tell mom and dad. And he's like, all right, you can go.
Yeah.
Cut to them like going through the woods.
I'm an only child, so I can't relate. But like, that's another great plot point though, is that she goes out with him. One of the witch's familiars, the yellow-eyed hare, like startles the horse. So Thomason falls off and bangs her head. The boy gets lost. She comes back alone. So not only was she with the infant when the infant was lost, but she's also was with the brother when he was lost, and he shows back up like the next night naked and bewitched.
And again found by Thomason.
So it's just like she is the one who is like always there when the shit happens. So she is obviously the one that the rest of the family blames when they do accept that there is witchcraft at work. She must be the witch. It also doesn't help that she jokingly told one of the twins that because she was being a brat, she told the little girl that she was the witch, and like, if you don't stop being a brat, I'm gonna bewitch you and eat you or whatever. So then when all of the shit starts happening, they're of course like, she's the witch, she told me so, and it's like, oh well, fuck. At that point, she didn't know it. Now. Yeah, she didn't know there was a witch.
Yeah. I love that too, because like then the kids like start like becoming bewitched and like rolling on the ground.
Well, it's like, and the kids have probably been bewitched all along because they've been hanging out with Black Phillip.
Yeah.
And that scene is great, like during the exorcism, when they're praying over the son and the twins like fall over and start writhing because they can't say the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And they say, I've forgotten my prayers. That shit is fucking great. They're some of the only ones in the film that the only characters in the film that we don't definitively know what happens to them. They just disappear. I mean, obviously they're taken away by the witch, when she comes in the night and is like eating the goats, because she's gone. The kids are gone after that, but they're the only ones that we don't definitively know what happens to. But I love that like a central conflict of the whole film is like Thomason trying to convince her family that she's not a fucking witch and that like she's not the one responsible for this. And then at the end, when she's the only one left and Black Phillip takes her into the barn and reveals himself as the devil to her and offers her power for the sake of selling her soul. She's like, yeah,
The fuck else do I have to do?
Yeah.
right. She's been like, my family's dead, like, and that's that's also why this time I really like noticed the significance of her like saying her prayers at the very beginning and like beseeching God for, for happiness and like success for their family, and then like everything going against them. And it's like, because God is not here.
Clearly denied that.
Like the devil is here, and like, yeah, she makes a very earnest prayer to God at the beginning, and
God doesn't show up.
and the opposite, yeah, and God is silent, but who's not silent? The devil.
Good old Lucy.
Yeah. So at that point, yeah, she has nothing to lose. That's a great scene as well when Black Phillip finally speaks to her.
That's probably my favorite scene.
It's one of them for sure. One thing that I noticed this time that somehow I didn't notice on my other 5 watches is like after we hear him talking to her, it's just like the look on her face, and it does the reverse shot. You've got the one leg of the goat, and then the other leg walks in. It's the boot, and I've never noticed that before, and it's such a fucking good touch. Man, like that's such a fucking great scene.
It's so incredible too that in like 2015, probably 14 when this was shot.
Yeah.
Like after like so many years of CG and just like movie like tricks and editing techniques to finally get a film that is almost just exclusively live effects again like that, to just play at the theater of what's in front of you. It's a horrible way of phrasing it, but
I get what you're saying.
What's legitimately there, and because of it, the film just feels so much more genuine and tangible. And these horrific moments that are occurring are just occurring in front of you, instead of it just being a spooky CG monster.
No, I appreciate that a lot. And I mean, this is one of those films where like you don't need the CG.
No, it's so much better
like
without.
it is pretty much entirely practical. I would be hard. I would be hard pressed to think of any examples that I would say were definitively CG. Like even at the very end when she goes out into the woods,
Could be wire work.
and it's certainly wire work.
Yeah.
It's definitely wire work. When she comes across the coven of witches dancing around the fire, and then they levitate and she levitates, like that's definitely wire work. Like the CG removed the wires, but like I can't think of anything in this film that's like, oh yeah, that was definitely CG.
Yeah, if anything, maybe a little bit of compositing.
Yeah, which I mean, I barely consider CG. Like I really appreciate also like how Robert Eggers discerns what we see and what we don't.
Oh yeah, I mean,
He strikes an excellent balance of leaving like certain things up to our imagination, but also like seeing things that are horrifying and like really add to the mood and the atmosphere.
Oh, even at the very beginning, like that opening shot with the witch in front of the moon, like it is only that the last millisecond that you recognize the silhouette of her levitating, like on the broom. Like before then, like it's super out of focus and out of depth in the way she's bobbing,
what it looks like, what it's always looked like to me is when it comes out and into focus, it looks like it's a bird on a perch. Not that she's levitating, but that she is.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure it's like the back of her. It's the back of her, and she's on a broom like that. And it's so out of focus, like with her in front of the moon, because he didn't want to have that stereotypical shot.
It could be, yeah.
There is some ambiguity to it,
but it's like
nice.
like the weight of a body, like on a.
But it's not moving up and down. Like it is still. It looks like it starts close up and like you see her hair and she appears to be cloaked. But then when it pulls out and you see the whole silhouette, like I said, to me, it's always looked like a raven or an owl, like sitting on a branch. And like one of her familiars that we see multiple times in the film is the raven.
Yeah.
So like that could be her in the shape of an animal. It's one of those things where like I think that,
it is very out of focus.
I think it is. Yeah. It is purposely out
Which
of
is
focus.
The point, I guess.
It is. There is that ambiguity, and man, honestly, I feel like in horror, witches are really underrated spooky villains because we have, and I talked a little bit about this in the Suspiria episode, but about how like the idea of witches in pop culture has been so influenced by like Halloween costumes and like the Wizard of Oz and like the spooky green faced lady with the wart on her nose flying around in the broomstick with the black cat, you know. I think that witches are laughed at a lot as like come on, it's just an old lady who does spells. But like movies like this and like The Black Coat's Daughter and like the for me the Suspiria remake. I know you haven't seen that, Cleve, and I know Ben, we have
The original Suspiria,
very different
somewhat.
opinions on that. But like I love that there are films that like portray witches as like legitimately dangerous, scary antagonists in ways that I think that pop culture just generally does not have that perception. And what I think is great about this film in particular is that like I think it's a very realistic portrayal of how people would have felt about witches at that time. And you look at a film like this and you maybe start to realize why
they were so fucking terrifying.
Why they were so terrifying, and why like the Salem witch trials were a thing.
Like, why those people like burned their fuking neighbors, you know?
Right, exactly.
Jesus.
Because like if witches are real, then they're like this, you know, and I think, and especially like I loved The Black Coat's Daughter so much, and I love this movie so much.
I'm glad you brought that movie up.
And I think that the more like recent films I see, and I love the new Suspiria so much, where there's like the practice of witchcraft and that shit. Like I'm here for it.
I think
like,
witches
I'm so here for
are
it.
really great villains because much like I would say in a lot of ways like Freddy Krueger, you're not limited to the realm of the real.
Yeah, 100%.
You have a lot of flexibility on what you can do with them.
Yeah.
And that makes them, in a lot of ways, unpredictable.
You've got devil magic at work,
imposing. Yeah, exactly. One thing I wanted to talk about really quickly.
Sure.
I think we're kind of wrapping up at this point.
Yeah, we're close.
But speaking of the Raven being a familiar, one of my personal favorite scenes is the scene with the mother.
Yeah.
Where she has a dream sequence.
Almost more of a hallucination.
Yeah. Where she, finds the baby.
Well, and the son, too, who died after the exorcism scene, he comes back to her with the baby. And what I love about that scene, too, in connection with, like, the end, is that when he speaks to her, he speaks in whispers. And they make mention of, like, the devil whispering in people's ear. And when Black Phillip addresses Thomason at the end, and he becomes the devil,
ASMR.
he whispers, you know? So, yeah, that shit is great. But continue.
But yeah,
I know where you're going with this.
She nurtures the baby because he's finally back, and she gets kind of that sense of relief. And then you get this awesome reversal on that, I guess you could say. Where it's shown that she was actually hallucinating or in a dreamlike state of some sort. The actual thing that she was, breastfeeding was a crow that was just pecking at her.
Yeah, that's just like eating off her breast. Yeah, no, that is a great shot.
Amazing imagery.
Yeah, it's so spooky, and also because like before that too, the son says like I have a book that I want you to look at. Will you look at it with me? And they've already established that to worship the devil, to become a witch or whatever, you sign his book, and Thomason signs his book at the end. And so it's unclear whether like the mother dies, but like it's unclear whether she signed away her soul in the book before that.
But I do love that they do make it clear that like that event did happen.
Yeah,
because like the husband goes to like wake her later because like he was out of the house. He was outside. Well,
he was in bed the entire time. That's what I like so much about it is because she's like oh I should wake your father, and so he knows that you and Sam are back, and the kid's just like no, let him sleep. And yeah, so he's in bed the whole time. But yeah, then she wakes up the next morning and like you see the blood on the front of her dress. So like yeah, she was getting that titty ate by that raven.
Yeah, it's horrifying. And it was neat for me too because like I knew that the scene was coming up, this last time watching it, and I was like more versed in like the sequence of events of the film. I had it in my memory that shot of her with the Raven was much more like tight and visual, and you saw more of it than you did. And when the scene came back around, like the majority of it is in shadow. It was just that my mind had just filled in all the gaps because that's how you fucking do it. And it had set with me like so much more viscerally than it was portrayed, because it was just portrayed so shadowy and ambiguous and dark. I mean, it's very clear what's going on, but you can't really see as much as I had remembered. And I loved that, like having that recollection.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's lit only by the firelight from, you know, the fire and the hearth behind them. So yeah, it's just moody as shit. You know, it's such the cinematography of the whole film like just has such good light work. Like I liken it to Rembrandt paintings, not only because like the garb is very similar to what you see in a lot of Rembrandt paintings, but like the lighting is very similar.
Yeah,
like,
those interior shots like very Caravaggio-esque as well. Like,
yeah, Caravaggio, but like
of...
the Dutch masters like Rembrandt and Vermeer, and from studying people like Caravaggio, like had such good mastery of like light and shadow. And considering that there are not a ton of moving shots in this film, like there's a healthy amount, but a lot of it is very still and painterly, and I appreciate that about the cinematography. Like that's that kind of shit that gets me off. Like those are like those like Rembrandt and Vermeer are two of my favorite painters of all time, and like to see such clear inspiration in the cinematography from like some of my favorite artists, like that's that shit. Like,
and it's true too. Like I would say that like Rembrandt and Vermeer are much closer references for this film than like say Caravaggio, because like Rembrandt and Vermeer like used natural lighting almost exclusively, and,
right?
Like,
and also
whereas like Caravaggio would like usually use like have like multiple lantern light sources for his pieces, and this film is mostly naturally lit.
Also, Rembrandt was, I'm like 90% sure, but like Rembrandt was active as a painter around the time that this film takes place in the 1600s. I believe that was Rembrandt's era.
He lived for a good while.
He did.
He's one of the few. Like,
yeah. But
he was around for a minute.
I'm fairly sure that Rembrandt was primarily a painter of the 1600s.
Jesus Christ! How many portraits did Rembrandt self-portraits?
Self-portraits? Well,
something outrageous.
70 something.
It's something like just unheard of.
Yeah, 70 something.
Let me go ahead and look that up, because I think that's a cool point. Oh yeah, Rembrandt Van Ryn. Born 1606, died 1669, age 63.
Yeah,
damn, I think so. He was just really prolific, like 63. I mean, that's pretty good. Like,
I mean, for the 1600s,
yeah, it's pretty good.
But I think this movie takes place in like the 1640s or something like that. So yeah, like that would have been right around Rembrandt's time. Yeah. So I think that the cinematography inspiration there is probably. I would love to pick the cinematographer's brain on how he shot a lot of that, but I think that the influence of painters like Rembrandt is definitely there.
Well, I mean, yeah, like the opening sequence is like pretty incredibly reminiscent of like The Night Watch or any of his pieces. It's neat.
Do y'all want to rate?
I mean, we barely have to.
I think we all know.
Yeah.
It's a 5 pod for me. Perfect.
5 for me.
Yep, 5 for me. One thing I want to say is the awesome thing about the period piece in this stuff. A lot of times period pieces can be a little dry. You look at the fantastic period pieces by people like Peter Greenaway, who have really strong attention to detail, are all about like historical figures. Painters, kings, whatnot, and they can get a little long and tedious.
I think
but the thing is, this has such a strong sense of dread and tone throughout that it just carries you through it.
I think that's the thing is a lot of period pieces are like historical dramas generally. There's a relatively small number of like true horror period pieces, and that's one of the things that this film has the strongest for it.
Yeah, I guess the word I shouldn't use is accurate. The word I should probably use is genuine. Those are the most genuine, like, historical. Like,
I don't think
pieces.
I don't think accurate
I
is
don't think
incorrect
accurate
either.
is-
I
Well, I
think
mean,
the
apart
amount
from, like,
of
there's a witch. Like, the whole movie centers around like a fictitious.
okay, sure.
creature, but-
The events of the film are not historical, but the world building I think is accurate.
Oh,
like
fully,
they're-
and you know, I agree.
the dialogue is period accurate. The accents are period accurate. The sets are period accurate. So like but genuine. No, you're not wrong. Like it is an extremely genuine film.
And one of the reasons for that, I believe, as well, is one of the factors that brings such a true human element to this film and to its setting. It's not a biopic. So you get to feel like these are real people because they don't have to be put on through the lens of like of
right,
history.
like I said, most period pieces are historical dramas.
Exactly.
You know, they're usually about focusing on some notable historical figure
and all the bias that comes along with that.
I mean, it's not necessarily problematic. There are plenty of like good historical biopics, but like
yeah, like again, Peter Greenaway stuff is fantastic and authentic and all of that stuff, but it's not an end itself in this movie. It's a means to an end.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it works for immersion purposes, but it's not the whole story.
Well, this film's subtitle that is often on the posters and stuff like that is it's The Witch, a New England Folktale, and it is that, exactly. It is a New England folktale, and it is extremely genuine. And like I said, it's very immersive because I think it's also really interesting, so it's easier to become immersed in something that you're fascinated by and that you're drawn to. Like, my problem with, like, Barry Lyndon is, like, I just think it's kind of boring and it's really long. Like I like Kubrick, but like Barry Lyndon I think is one of his more boring films that I've
fuck
seen.
with this Barry Lyndon hate, man.
I'm sorry. Like I think that technically it's an extremely good film, but like it's just really long and I just think it's kind of boring and I lose interest in it, and being bored breaks my immersion.
Well, my micro hot take corner is Barry Lyndon is less boring than 2001.
I haven't seen 2001, so I can't say.
Okay, I didn't realize you haven't seen 2001.
No, it's like
Holy
it's
shit.
like number one film on my list of shame. But anyway, roundabout, that is a unanimous perfect score for The Witch from all of us. It joins the hallowed halls of the Golden Pods alongside films such as It Follows and The Poughkeepsie Tapes and The Thing. I believe those are the only other three, so this is our fourth perfect Golden Pod
all
film.
those sound fitting to me.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen this movie, fucking see it. It's awesome. And with that, I'm gonna take us into the Metacritic corner.
You freaking bricks! When will you learn? When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
What time is it? Metacritic
Corner.
Corner. What time is it? It's
Metacritic corner. This is, I think, an appropriate one because we love this film so much and we think it's perfect, but there are definitely some people out there who disagree with us. So
Lay it on us.
I've got two, one semi-long one very short. I'm going to start with the semi-long one. This is from Metacritic user SEAOF. It's one word, so it's either C of or it's Schaff, if we're going by the pronunciation of the name Sean. Whatever. They say, don't waste your time on this one.
God, somebody start this one.
All the good reviews are complete buffoons. The Witch is one of the worst movies I have seen, made worse by the fact that most people say it's a must-watch. Kinda getting your hopes up for a chilling horror mystery movie, but it's none of those things. Movie is just one boring scene leading into another boring scene. Well, except for that one really disturbing scene that everyone is saying made them uncomfortable. And it does, I'm not going to lie, but so would filming a roadkill squirrel for 10 minutes while maggots in its intestines. That's not in the movie, by the way. In all this movie, In all, this movie is a bland period piece that had some interesting elements, but wasted everything on boring dialogue and story. It has nice cinematography, though, not that it pulls this movie out of the gutter. 2 out of 10.
Wow. Oh my god, that was amazing.
I like how there's like, well, there is that one really disturbing scene, and they don't specify which one is. I'm sure we know. I'm sure it's probably the baby getting killed. But also, it would be disturbing if you filmed a roadkill squirrel with maggots in its intestines.
Does Metacritic let you click on the user profile? I want to see if he has any 10 out of 10 horror movies.
It doesn't appear so.
Oh, shit.
It won't let me.
Okay.
At least not on my phone. Okay. So this next one, which is very short, is from user Silent High Times.
Can relate.
Yeah, same. Simple, boring nonsense. The VVitch was just plain bad. I had fell to sleep on 3 occasions until I finished it. Towards the end, I thought I was going to actually see some nice shit, but even that didn't happen. Fuck this movie. 3 out of 10.
Well, they have no uncertainty about that, do they?
I had fell to sleep on 3 occasions until I finished it.
The Witch. Bad movie to watch high.
I should also mention
bad idea.
Their instances of swearing were they self-censored with asterisks.
Oh, wow. Love
Solid.
Thought I was going to actually see some nice shit, but even that didn't happen. Fuck this movie. Fantastic.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I've scrolling through Metacritic, like I'm not going to read more of these, but like all of the bad reviews were like, this is boring. I kept falling asleep. Nothing happens. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what are you going into this movie expecting? Oh man, okay, no, here's another one, actually. I just scrolled across it. Okay, this is from Signor Santoni. Waste of time. How this movie is getting good reviews ratings is beyond me. Barely any suspense, 0 jump scares. And it's basically just one long cliffhanger. The actors were great, but the script was so boring. M. Night Shyamalan status. This movie sucked ass and I'm pissed that I watched it. 0 out of 10. Just, like, imagine having the kind of brain worms where, like, you think The Witch is a bad movie.
Like, I can understand, like...
I'm not about shaming
like,
people
not
for their
liking the
taste,
film
but...
Like, I can understand not liking the film because it's too visceral or, like, you know, like, it's something that's not for them in that respect. Like, I can get that. Like, this kind of subject matter is not for everybody. But, like,
sure.
Thinking it's boring?
Well, right,
what I don't
that's
get.
the thing, like, boring is, like, the last thing that comes to mind when I think of this movie.
Totally.
And it's not even a slow movie. In terms of pacing, like, it's a tight, like, 93 minutes. The most horrifying scene happens 20 minutes in. Like, it's not a slow film.
At all.
Like, I can understand when people are, like, boring, when, like, it takes a long time for shit to happen. Like, slow burns are not for everybody. But this isn't a slow burn film.
I mean, like, when the fuck did Infanticide get boring? That's what I don't get. Like, I don't understand,
Oh my god,
man.
what a quote. What a quote.
Like, it's horrifying.
Put
like,
that on a t-shirt.
Oh my god, this is
please
the
never
future
take
that
that
the
out of
liberals
context.
want.
Please never, ever take that out of context from me. You've already heard how much that jarred me and how I recognize how unsettling that is.
Well, you
man.
can never run for Congress, Cleveland.
Yeah,
This will
that's
come
it.
back
That's
and
the
bite you
one.
in the ass.
Leave it in. God damn it. We on Pod People do not condone infanticide in any manner. And I think
We do think it's scary, though.
We do.
It is.
I think it's
It
very
is.
scary.
See, I think this movie is a bit of a slow burn, but I think it's ineffective slow burn. Like, holy shit.
I think it's
I don't think
incredibly tense.
Any
Like,
movie... Well, it's that sense of dread that just permeates everything. In the traditional sense, you don't get those set pieces at quite the same speed as, you know, traditional movies, but that's...
I mean, it's not like a slasher film. It's not, like, action heavy, but I think that, like...
And that's...
In terms of, like, pertinent events happening in the film, like, it's pretty well paced. I don't think that pacing-wise it's really that slow. It's just tonally very different from a lot
Well,
of
in
the,
a lot of
the
ways,
horror that
it's
we get
fairly
these days.
minimalistic too.
True.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And that kind of emphasizes the slowness of kind of some of those long shots and stuff like that, even though the tension in the sense of dread is just permeating every inch of this.
You know,
It's not a magic forest. It's a very real forest.
You know what I would bet is probably the main reason why a lot of people on Metacritic think this film is boring is probably because the combination of the characters' accents and the period dialogue, they probably don't understand most of it.
Yeah, which equals boring.
Which equals boring. I don't understand what is happening, so I'm bored. I would be willing to bet. I will admit that the first time we saw it, like, I wasn't bored, but in that theater, the dialogue was badly mixed under the rest of the sound and the music, and their accents are pretty thick, and it is like 1600s accurate period dialogue. So on my first watch, I missed a lot because I just couldn't understand some of what the characters were saying.
One of the things I'll say with this movie, there's no shame in putting the subtitles
I was about to
on.
say, I think the second time I watched it, I
Yeah,
put on subtitles.
totally.
A couple of my views, I put the subtitles on. I mean,
I think I've watched it
helps.
once or twice with subtitles as well. I'm at the point where I've
We
seen
did
it.
this last time, didn't
No,
we?
we didn't.
No.
Well, I think we're all at the point where we've seen it so many times that we understand the accents. Like in this viewing,
fully.
I caught like everything. Like I didn't.
I caught stuff I hadn't caught before.
Right, same. But like I understood all of the dialogue. Like there wasn't
same.
like what was that supposed to be? But like on my first couple of watches, that was there. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like there's no shame in putting on the subtitles for The Witch. You might actually get more because some of the accents are thick, and the dialogue is, if it's something that you're not used to, you might miss some
Yeah,
stuff.
and I don't think it'll break the immersion. If
No,
anything,
not at
it'll
all.
add
Not at
to
all.
it,
But
you know?
And there's a reason we've seen it so many times. Like, it's such an
Yeah.
immersive tapestry. Like, you have to kind of go back and, like, reacquaint yourself with that world to fully comprehend it, because it's so obscure.
But I think that is probably, I would bet money on that being the reason why the people whose reviews I read are like, this is boring.
Yeah.
They probably just didn't understand what was happening. But anyway.
Well, it's funny because even a lot of the people I follow on Letterboxd, I was just scrolling through it now to look at the cinematographer, but even a lot of the people I follow have fairly low reviews of it, just because I think it is quite a divisive film in a lot of ways.
That's wild.
You know?
I just like, I think...
It's not for everyone, and that's not
yeah.
a bad thing by any means.
No, and there's a lot of films that are like that, and I'll acknowledge that too. But like, man, I just think The Witch is such a perfect film. I feel like
I definitely want to bat for it because it's a highbrow horror movie, and those are my fucking jam and a half.
I also
them.
really hope that Robert Eggers' next film is of the same quality. I have no reason to believe otherwise, but this is his one and only feature film so far, so he might have just gotten lucky. But I think that, like, from watching this film, like, I definitely got the impression that he is a very savvy filmmaker, both writer and director. And I have no reason to believe that his subsequent films are going to be bad. We have predictions for one of them that's supposed to come out later this year, The Lighthouse, which we talked about with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, which is light on any sort of plot synopsis, but is a horror movie, and I feel like, considering that he's a New England boy and it's set in New England, that's probably going to be Lovecraftian. I hope so, at least. And honestly, I think that if anybody could do a modern day Nosferatu remake, it would be fucking Robert Eggers.
Oh yeah,
I honestly like.
He's the pick.
Most of the time, I'm not in favor of remakes of good films. Although, in my opinion, the Werner Herzog Nosferatu is much better than the original. But I think
we have
that,
different views on that, but we won't get into it.
Like I said,
We will at some point.
we will eventually. The Herzog Nosferatu is probably going to be one of my picks, my next picks in the next couple of months.
I'm good for that.
But I think if any modern filmmaker can do Nosferatu justice, it would be Robert Eggers. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, that's definitely the end of Metacritic Corner. That ended a little while ago, but here we are.
When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
And now it's time for a word from our sponsor for this week.
Yep, it certainly is. Yeah. Where's the thing?
Oh, the copy?
Yeah.
I got it right here.
All right, cool. Yeah, hand me the old copy. Oh, thanks, man, for handing me this copy.
Pulled it right from the sponsor shelf. All hail the sponsor shelf.
Oh man, it's really hard to read. I've got my glasses on. I'm taking them off. I still can't really make out the print. Oh, I get why. Okay, yeah. This is from Lemon and Egbert's in Invisible Ink. And I don't have a catchphrase because they wrote it with their product. So, sorry guys, but that's all I got.
Lemon and Egbert's Invisible Ink. You won't be able to read it either. Thanks, Lemon and Egbert's Invisible Ink. All right, well, I think that'll bring us to the end of this week's episode. We got a chance to gush about a movie we love, which is always refreshing.
Yeah.
Next week, for real this time, we're going to be talking about Jordan Peele's new film, Us. I know we hyped it up last time, and then we realized that it wasn't going to be out in time.
Splice in the hype from that one.
Yeah, so, that is coming out, and we gonna go see it. And we're going to talk about it for real. And my hype has not diminished from the last
anything. It has grown.
So, early reviews are in since it made its premiere at South by Southwest this last week.
Ayo.
So, we do have a preliminary Rotten Tomatoes score. Let's go ahead and look at what we predicted really quick. It looks like TC predicted 90. Cleveland, you predicted 85. And I said 86.
No, you Price is Righted me.
Yeah, but I mean, we didn't look at each other's before we guessed. It was completely
we wrote them all
isolated.
down.
Wait, you just wrote down 86?
I put all the guesses down before I even gave them to you guys.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's just, great minds, I guess.
Yeah.
Just do one off
Well,
from prime number. All right, yep.
Early reviews are in. We have 48 reviews in right now, and Us is sitting at 100.
Ayo!
Yeah,
Keep
so-
it 100. I'm still going...
I'm happy to lose.
Yeah, I'm still going to go in with the healthy amount of skepticism, but, like, honestly, once again, first time director, he fucking knocked it out of the park with Get Out. I have no reason to believe that this film isn't going to be awesome. I keep getting inundated with trailers on Hulu. Like, I'm just super hyped for this movie. I can't fucking wait. So if you out there are also hyped for this movie, check back with us next week. If you don't want spoilers, go see it this week when it comes out, because as always, we will be getting into spoilers. Thank you as always for listening. If you like the show and you want to hear us keep doing what we're doing, hit those 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you can leave a rating and review, do the thing. It helps us out. And tell your friends about the show. Share an episode that you like with somebody who likes spooky movies. We really appreciate that. Follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod. At this point, we'll probably have put out a little like mini ad about it, but we're running a horror bracket.
Yeah,
for March Madness.
Or
rather,
season
Ben is running a horror
upon
bracket.
us. You know, all the basketballs and whatnot. But that more importantly means all the brackets are coming out, whether it's for musicians or whatnot. So we're having a nice old horror movie bracket going on. And by the time this comes out, we're probably, top 8. We got those classics, I'm sure. We got a dark horse or 2 in there. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
Go vote.
Follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod. Go vote on that bracket. Help us decide, or like rather help us see what is the greatest horror film of all time, or at least everybody's favorite. It's all arbitrary, but it's just for fun. So, check that out on Twitter.
If you want to thank me for making an awesome bracket, you can tweet at me at Mr. Sheets. And if you want to complain about the bracket choices, you can email me at clevelandmosier@gmail.com.
Whoa. Honestly, cut that down.
Okay.
On my Gmail, like on the podcast.
I didn't think that was an actual Gmail.
That's
okay.
my Gmail.
Okay, I'll make one up then.
Okay.
If you have any complaints about the bracket, you can email me at cmosier.
Hey, whoa. Easy, man. Easy.
Yeah, follow us on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/podpeoplepod to check out all the list of all the films we've talked about on the show, our average ratings, links to those episodes. Yeah, do the thing. Follow me on Twitter if you want at Mr. Van Awesome.
Yeah, you can follow my tweets for Light Arc Studio, as well as check out my sweet painty wainies at ArtStation under Cleveland Mosier and or Iron Prism. And yeah, primarily, like, keep your ears to the rails. We're doing, we started our first couple rounds of alpha and beta testing for It Stares Back, and oh boy, we've got a game. We've got it coming. It's gonna be sweet.
We've got a game. Swiggity swooty, it's coming for that booty.
You know it. That's all from me.
All right, well, thank you again for listening. Until next time, keep living deliciously, baby.
Witch.